So I hope you have a wonderful time here. I'll bring my remarks to a close now, and I'm now going to introduce you to my leader. We have a leader here in the Labour Group in the Lords. So our leader here is a very good friend of mine. We came into the Lords actually on the same list 9 years ago. The leader of the Labour Group in the House of Lords is Baroness Smith, who should tell you a bit about herself. Angela.
Well, thanks very much, Roy, and welcome everybody. I hope you're enjoying your tea. I have to tell you, we don't have this every day in the House of Lords. It's a special occasion, and Roy has to do the washing up afterwards. So my name's Angela Smith. I'm the shadow leader of the House of Lords. And what that means, I'm the leader of the Labour Party in the House of Lords, which makes me the leader of the opposition. So I direct, as you see in the House of Commons with the Prime Minister and Jeremy Corbyn, we do the same in the House of Lords, except I'm the dispatch box on the other side. Now, you probably had this idea that we were going to turn up in fancy red robes. I think I do have a fancy red robe, but I borrowed one actually. Mine doesn't have fur because I refuse to wear fur, so it's got fake fur on it. And I've worn it, I think, 8 times since I came into the House of Lords, the same time as Roy Kennedy did. Mostly we look pretty smart in our normal clothes, with our ceremonial things. The other thing you might also have thought, if we're from the House of Lords, we had to be really old. Think about this, the 3 party leaders, Labour, me, Liberal Democrat, a guy called Dick Newby, and Natalie Evans, the Tories, the leader, the 3 party leaders in the House of Lords are younger than the 3 party leaders in the House of Commons. Think about it. And also, the other thing is that women, I think, is a huge issue. The Labour Party in the House of Lords, out of our last 6 leaders, 5 have been women. So we think it might be a man's turn next time, but we're not sure. So put the misconceptions to the back and think about the work we do and what we are. Like Roy, my background is my parents still live in the council house that I grew up in. And it's interesting to say that there are people in the House of Lords that probably wouldn't have thought for standing for election. Now, I was an MP for 13 years, I was a government minister, I was Gordon Brown's aide at number 10 Downing Street when he was Prime Minister. So I've been involved in politics, but we have people who are actually so severely disabled they'd never be able to stand for election, but that's a voice for disabled people in the House of Lords that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And people involved in the arts, in science, in media, who aren't politicians, they just bring an expertise to what we do. So we're not elected, which means we haven't actually got very much power. What we think we've got is hopefully some influence through having experience in different fields, through looking at things a bit differently. Whereas if you're an MP, Gareth Thomas, who's a Member of Parliament, also Labour and Co-op, along with Roy and I, he has to go back to his constituency tonight, and he will have a mound of letters of casework, of individual problems, of issues to do with the constituency. I'll go home tonight, and I'll be preparing over the weekend for 2 big debates next week, some legislation I've got in full dealing with. So the focus will be on legislation. But that's very much the difference between the 2 houses. I'm going to speak for a short while and I'll take any questions, but can I ask you a question? For the young people here, not the grown-ups, but the youngster ones, how many of you would have said you were interested in politics before coming here today? You don't count. So some of you would have done. How many of you thought perhaps you weren't interested in politics? Didn't like the idea of politics or politicians? A few hands, a bit shy about putting them up there as well. So what I say is put your hand up and keep it up if you be. How many of you would have said you were interested in the issue of housing? And what happened in housing? Keep your hand up, don't put it down again. How many would have said about the environment and climate change? How many would have said about employment and education? Almost everybody in here, you are interested in politics. Because all politics is the way we organise ourselves to make decisions on issues that matter to us. And your Vice Chairman said about the issue about votes at, so Roy mentioned about votes at 16 as well. Another misconception, the House of Lords has now several times voted to give votes to young people at the age of 16, particularly in the referendum on the EU. And we wanted that because the consequences of us leaving the European Union will last with you a lot longer than will last with us old folks. It was the House of Commons that overturned that. So had it been up to the House of Lords, 16-year-olds would have had a vote in the European elections. So blame the MPs. But you would have thought really older people might have been a bit more reticent about that. It was the older people saying, actually, you've got longer to live with this than we have. We think you should have the right to vote, and we will continue to do that and keep challenging. I think there's two things I want to say about where we are today in politics and looking forward. I think the key issue is what kind of country do we want to be, and how do we see ourselves in the future? Brexit, you can't have any political discussion without Brexit. It's dominating our political lives. We are doing hardly anything else. You think of the big issues we need to tackle in this country? Increasingly, I see far more people sleeping in shop doorways now than I have at any point in the last 10, 15 years. We're not dealing with that. We're not building the homes. What about people whose jobs are being lost at the moment? We should be tackling what's going to be the industry of the future. It's not going to be manufacturing, it's going to be a different kind of industry. People making electric cars, for example. We can bring in the environment into that. We are not dealing with that. We're not properly dealing with climate change and the climate emergency at the moment. You can go on and on, because what we are talking about is Brexit. And we're paying lots and lots of money, millions and millions, to deal with Brexit. So that dominates everything at the moment. And I have a political bias, so you have to understand I come from a political bias position. I voted to remain. I think we should stay in the European Union, but there was a referendum, marginally said wanted to leave, and that's what Parliament was right to try and do. But I do think it has brought out the worst in some people and some politicians. I have never known the level of political debate be so uncomfortable and so divisive. And for people like me and Gareth and Roy, who regard ourselves as moderates in the Labour Party, it has felt deeply uncomfortable at times. The worst time, I think, for all of us was when we had an MP, our friend, was murdered. And it is shocking to think in this day and age in this country that could happen. I don't know a single member of Parliament, mostly female, but not just female, who hasn't had abuse or threats. And that's, I think, it's always become accepted that you have permission to be rude to politicians. My sense is that most politicians are good people. They try to do the things that are right. They get it wrong sometimes I think I don't agree with them. I think there are some that have language themselves they use that makes it harder to have that sensible debate. But unless we get back to that kind of debate that we should be having, which is moderate, reasonable and respectful of other people's opinions, we're not going to change the tone of politics. So that has to be the next generation coming through as well. How we conduct ourselves, and it starts in schools, how we talk to each other in the classroom, how we talk to each other in the playgrounds and at work, all that feeds into the political discourse. And being an old fuddy-duddy, part of the problem is social media. What used to be a conversation in the pub with your mates, and now gets put online and is there forever. And when I first became a member of Parliament, I spent 13 years in the House of Commons. I was elected in 1997, probably before some of you were born. People would have to write to their MPs. So my first day as an MP, I turned up in the House of Commons, I go down to the post room, and I dragged the sack of letters from there to the lift and upstairs to a desk I'd been given. Nowadays, most MPs will get a handful of letters. They will get thousands of emails. If you're going to write a rude letter to somebody to complain about something, once you've let off steam in the letter the first time, the effort of putting it in an envelope, then get a stamp and posting it, calms you down, so you write a second one. But if all you've got to do is press a button, you can let off steam. And I think what's happened is people have used that as an excuse to let off steam, and the debate has heated up considerably. So I think there's a real issue that's going to have to change dramatically about the language we use, the tone we use. When Jo was murdered, I had to speak in the House of Commons, House of Lords, before we went across to her service. And one of the things that worries me is that when I was younger, if I'd said I wanted to get involved in politics, perhaps stand for the council or be an MP, I think my mum and dad would be really proud, and they're proud of what I do. But if my nieces and nephews were to tell me now that they want to be a politician, I'd say, well, are you sure? Is that sure that's what you want to do? We have to get back when somebody says, I want to serve my community, I want to engage in politics, be part of the decision-making process, I want to be on the council, we should be really proud they want to get engaged. And that's where we've got to go. So, it's down to you, the next generation coming through, who are going to be the councillors and MPs of tomorrow. Think how you talk to people, think what you want to say, think of your message, and make people be proud of you in what you do. So, I think that's sort of the biggest theme I have about what to do. But we all have two choices. There are times when my political party drives me insane. There was a time when somebody would go on TV and I want to bang my head against the wall because I disagree with what they're saying and I'm angry. But it's my political party and I have a duty to do what I can to make that party sensible, to actually represent the values I believe in. I've got a responsibility on that. And we all do that. So there's something you don't like in an organisation you're a member of, in a political party you support, in an issue you're in, you've got two choices. You can walk away, you can give up, or you get stuck in and you say, my values count and my voice counts. So my message, I think, to you is make your voice count. If you don't speak up, nobody else is going to speak up for you. Don't rely on other people. We'll do our best, but I think our biggest role now really is to encourage you to come forward. The Brexit debate is going to continue for some time, and we've got to try and lower the temperature on that. We will do our best, but we can only do it with your support and knowing you're there behind us, ready to step into our shoes to take over. So that's sort of a gallop of where I think we are in political life at the moment. I'm very optimistic. I didn't sound it, did it? But truly I am. My parents got married about 1958, 1957. I was reading something a while ago and it said the year in which people were the happiest in the last 100 years in Britain was in 1958. So my mum and dad just got married. So 59, I was born. And that wasn't the only reason they were happy, because my mum and dad got married. But it was a lot about, there were lots of people like my mum and dad. They'd lost their homes because places had been bombed out during the war, so there wasn't much housing, it was bad housing they lived in. They longed for a council house, which came along about 15 years later. They didn't have much money, Dad was in a low-paid job, but they believed that the future was going to be better and different, and that lives would be better for their children and they could be part of it. And that's, I think, the challenge for the future, is that we have to make sure that the lives of our children and the next generation have the hope, the optimism, it's going to get better. Now we can do that, all of us, and it's up to you now to get stuck in, get involved and make the future that you want to have, not the future that somebody else says you should have. Thank you.
Molly, the question's as important as the answer, so I'll go around with this.
Brilliant. Who's got the first question? Oh, don't tell me you're shy. We'd have put some brandy and whiskey in the tea if you're going to be shy.
Well, I'll ask one.
That's a question. There's one. Oh,
If
one
you've
of
got a
the
younger
first,
one,
was there?
go for the younger.
Who's that?
No.
Okay.
Get a fly in his head.
I'm going to have to get Roy Kennedy to ask questions if it carries on like this. There was a question down here, wasn't there?
Who's that?
Gentleman with the lovely tie.
Thank you very much, Baroness Smith. That was a very good talk you gave us. Could I ask you what your views are on reform the House of Lords and how many peers you think there should be? After all, this is one of the largest parliaments in the world, perhaps second to China, and there has been discussion over the last 20 or 30 years of reducing the number of peers.
Thank you, sir.
It's the House of Lords that's trying to reduce the number. The government won't let us.
Okay.
There's a slight misunderstanding about how many peers there are. There are lots of people that aren't actually involved. They were peers, but they've retired, but they're still technically on the books. But the House of Lords has unanimously passed a proposal that would limit the size of the House of Lords. We've got a proposal how many peers should retire every year from each political party and each political group. Of course, we have Labour, Liberal, Conservative, as in the House of Commons. We also have crossbenchers who are independent and some bishops there. So we've identified how to reduce the size. We've said you should only have a term for 15 years and then retire. But the government won't provide time or allow us to do it. So I think you'll find very widespread support in the House of Lords. I don't want a job for life, I want to retire. I've got a garden that's full of weeds, there's all kinds of things people want to do. But it is nonsense that people should be in a position for life. So, and the other thing to change is the appointments process. At the moment, people can elect prime ministers to appoint who they want. Under David Cameron, more peers were appointed per year than any other prime minister in the history of this country. So that creates an imbalance politically, which you need not to have in the House of Lords because it doesn't work for you. We need to get some kind of balance. So yes, we support reform. I personally don't support an elected House because I think it would be more important than the House of Commons. You know, the House of Commons is elected, they're important. If you make us elected, if we would be elected, we would have a much more important role. And at the moment, I can say, I'm the Labour leader in the House of Lords, and we can advise the House of Commons. If you tell Roy Kennedy he's going to be elected, he'll be wanting to do everything. He'll have power. And MPs can't say, well, we have the final say, because we'll be elected as well. So an elected House would be much more powerful, and I think the House of Commons should be more powerful than the House of Lords. But I do think we've got to reduce the numbers, limit the terms, and just do things a bit differently.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Gumley House School, and hopefully one of the students will ask a question and I'll probably go with this one for the moment. From the Labour Party going forward, what would you say would be key priorities for it to get its place back in the political arena?
Right, it's difficult. There's a number of things. I think we have to get back to connecting with the people who voted Labour better, and there's a number of parts of that. That's listening. A lot of politicians use their mouths more than their ears, and I think all parties are guilty of that. So I think we have to be more reflective of the people we want to represent, better communicate that to people we represent, and at the moment I think there are times when, as a Liberal Labour Party, we don't look a very pleasant or nice place to be, and that has to change. So that's a big ask on what we have to do. That's what I think the three Labour people here seek to do, and that's a challenge for us. Our membership, I think, has been through a difficult time. We did very badly in the European elections, we did very badly in the council elections, and that often focuses people's mind on what they have to do to reconnect. So that is the big challenge for the Labour Party. When you think about it, this is probably the most incompetent government I've known in my lifetime. Yesterday, I don't know if you know, Theresa May had a go at me in the House of Commons and got it wrong. Now they can't even get basic things right. So we've got to change how we look, how we sound, and listen more than we talk.
Hello, could you say something about why it is the Labour Party, when they had the opportunity, did not go for a first-past-the-post system in electing MPs for Commons? And do you think if we had a first-past-the-post system now, it might have done something to solve the present impasse?
So we have got a first past the post system.
If we had proportional representation, replace proportional representation. Sorry.
Right. The answer is personal view. No, I don't. I think one of those things about proportional representation, people think, it will be more even votes because it's evenly spread around the country. There are two reasons why I think this current system is better. But not saying it can't be improved. I think there are ways to improve it. But firstly, one of the most important things for any constituent is to know who the person is that represents them in Parliament directly. How many people know who their MEPs are? I don't know who my members are. Right. 1, 2. I have no idea who my members of the European Parliament are, partly because they're elected in huge constituencies by proportional representation. Or when you get these multi-member constituencies where you have several representatives, it's easier for the representative to be more distant and take less notice of the people who represent them. So I don't think, so in that sense there's a problem. There's also, it leads to more coalition governments quite often. Smaller parties get elected. Now, no problems in more smaller parties to have representatives, but one of the problems with coalition governments is people vote for what they believe in, and the politicians go off and behind closed doors decide what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And I think we saw that with the coalition, if you think back to the Conservative Lib Dem coalition, where no party won outright, you had a coalition deal done, and lots of things that both parties promised their electors they would do, they didn't. If you think about it, big plank of the Liberal Democrat platform was no tuition fees, and no increase, and it went up in the first couple of months of government. So the danger is you get deals done behind closed doors that the electorate have no say in. If you're looking to change the political system, the voting system, the one I think I'm quite attracted to is what's called the French runoff system, where people go along 1 week and they vote for what they believe in, they vote for the party they want. The bottom two then drop out and they have a choice the next time round of voting for two. So again, the choice is with the people, not with the politicians. But I've never been attracted to PR for those reasons. And as a member of Parliament, I knew that everybody who wrote to me was my constituent. If you're one of 5 or 6 in a multi-member constituency, if people don't like the answer they get from one, they go to another or another. It's very difficult to know who represents you and how to put pressure on that person. So I think it's not perfect. I think there are all kinds of problems with first past the post, but I think it's probably better system in terms of giving certainty most of the time in government than if we switch to a PR system like many other countries have. They doesn't agree with me, I didn't think you would. Evia, one over here.
What do you do on an everyday basis within the Lords?
Good question.
There's a question. Two politicians are looking at me as well. Every day is different. That's one of the most fantastic things about the job that I do. It's also one of the most frustrating. So I normally get into the office between 8:30 and 10, depending what time I finished and what's going on. For my job, I have meetings about the management of how the House of Lords works. I have political meetings with people. I think, what have I done today? Today, I had a meeting with a cross-bench group of peers from all parties, a small group I get together to talk about Brexit and a motion that we're debating next week about proposing a no-deal Brexit. And I went into the House for questions and I spoke on a question on Northern Ireland. I then had a meeting of the staff team for the House of Lords, for Labour Lords. I then went down to the Commons and had a meeting with the Chief Whip and their team in the House of Commons. I've had a meeting about a report coming out next week to do with the House of Lords with the leaders of the other political parties. I've been drafting a speech for next week. I spoke to a few of my colleagues, my peers, about issues that are coming up that they're dealing with. And I've come to see you. I've got a few more things to do when I go back. But every day is different. I think the focus for most peers would be in questions and debates in the House of Lords. If you put on Parliament TV in the middle of the night, because they put the Commons on first and squash us on at the end, you'll probably see Roy on his feet most days with a question or debate. It's actually a different type of debate. The House of Lords debates tend to be a bit longer, a bit more thoughtful, a bit more detailed. Sorry, Gareth, apologising to the MPs. So that would be the focus of most people's days. But mine will start a bit earlier and end a bit later because of the top management side of things. Interested?
Is that a week?
That was today so far.
Hi. Just asking a question really because I noticed a lot of our young people aren't asking the question, so I'm going to ask it for them. Because I think one thing that must be frustrating for young people, and that's something you mentioned first of all, is the situation with Brexit and how it will affect young people's futures here. And the fact that many young people here haven't really got a say. Obviously we're seeing in terms of climate change, we've got the Swedish Greta and we've got student protests from school. But how do you feel that young people can actually get their view across about how they feel about this very divisive issue, I would say?
it's having a voice and using it. I think it's terrible that young people didn't get the vote in the referendum and then on. I think 16-year-olds should. But what politicians have to remember is before an election, all these 16-year-olds who write to them are going to be 18 for the next election. And your 18th birthday does give you enormous power. So if after the referendum you couldn't vote because you were 16, if there's another one, they're going to be 18. MPs are motivated, believe it or not, by people writing and going to see them. Because so few people do, other than sort of emails or something, actually turn up at the surgery like, I want to talk to you, I'm bringing some of my friends with you to talk to you about something. Does matter. I used to go around to the schools and do a sort of regular Q&A session with some of the schools and the sixth formers. And it was quite interesting and helpful. I found it helpful and useful as well, to be honest, because I was picking up on issues that somebody who was a little bit older than 16 or 18 wasn't hearing from other people I spoke to. But it's believing that you've got a voice and you have a right to be heard. And that's not a very sort of substantive answer, really, in some ways. It feels a bit inadequate, but I think it is that you have a right to be heard. And nobody's going to be doing it for you except you. If you don't like something, speak out. You're very quiet.
Want to do one more, lady?
Yeah, we're fine. Yeah.
Now give them a chance to talk.
So yesterday, I forgot the name of the MP, but a Labour MP got re-elected into the Labour Party, even though he has kind of a history for anti-Semitism. And one of the reasons as to why he was allowed back into the party was because he has a marginal seat. And my question is, how, like, as a Conservative, like, voter, which I plan to vote for the Conservative Party, how can you say, you as Labour, how can you say that you stand for equality and you stand for kind of equal rights for everybody when you can't even handle anti-Semitism's claims and hold them up to a good standard? And there's countless MPs out there that have that have a history of anti-Semitism and still nothing has really been done about it. And Jewish Labour supporters, they don't feel they can be within the party anymore. Like my own mum, she feels like she can't vote for the Labour Party because there's a lot of anti-Semitism, and I just feel like, how can you say you're a party which is for equality but you can't hold up to the standards?
Yeah, I think it's a shame on the Labour Party that we've had to be investigated over anti-Semitism. Most Labour Party members I know feel equally as horrified and angry, as upset about it as I do. And it's, I think, a scourge. One of the things that this has taught me is how deep anti-Semitism is in society as a whole. I've been really quite shocked about it. When I first joined the Labour Party, it was in Southend-on-Sea, which has a large Jewish community and several synagogues. And it was synonymous. So many people were members of both. It was quite obvious. It was the Jewish community in Southend were very much involved in the Labour Party, not just the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, but most of my friends are Jewish. So it was very hard for us to accept that we've had anti-Semitism in our party. It's affecting all parties. Anti-Semitism, the Conservative Party is facing attacks and Islamophobia as well. And I think the decision like Chris Williamson allowing him back into the Labour Party, it's irrelevant if he's got a marginal seat. That should never ever come into it. It's what people say and what people do they should be judged on. So I would personally not support his re-admittance in the way this has happened. I'm very unhappy about it, as are many of my colleagues. But I think political parties have to get their own house in order before they can tell anyone else how they should behave. And that is one of the biggest challenges. I alluded to it at the beginning, actually. I was saying about we can look like being nasty and unpleasant as political parties. So we have to take this on board. But I think you'll see it's a letter published today from, I think, something like 60 or 70 MPs and peers, both Gareth and Roy have signed, saying how they oppose this. And so there's a real, absolute determination from good people in the Labour Party to root this out. 100%, totally and absolutely.
Can I quickly thank Lady Angela Smith again for addressing the audience, and insist that in fact you continue to eat tea and the cakes, of course. Thank you very much.